Let's get a perspective on what we can hope to get out of Davos, if anything, this week. Davos is a snowy little mountain village. It's in the mountains of Switzerland. It was most notoriously the headquarters for the Swiss Nazi Party. That's its dark history. There's not much evidence of that today, of course. It's also one of the most expensive places on the planet, particularly this week as the global elites sort of descend on Davos for 3 or 4 days of networking, of chin-wagging, of learning, of discussing, of trying to influence the way the world works and the way the world thinks about critical issues of the day. Dr Adrian Saville is Chief Executive at Cannon Asset Managers, on the line to us from Johannesburg this evening. Does it set an agenda, Adrian, or is it just a cool place to hang out to, I don't know, mix with the kids that wouldn't otherwise mix with you?
A lot of money might get you a seat somewhere in the middle rows. An extraordinary amount of money might get you a seat in the front row. Bruce, it's I think a notable feature of this year's Davos is the number of people that are missing rather than the people who are there. And perhaps that immediately sets a tone for the agenda. Trump is not there; he's dealing with the shutdown and wall building. Macron is not there. He's dealing with the yellow vests, and Theresa May is working on Brexit. So out of the G7, that's already a large headcount missing. And then Russia and China, Russia and India rather, are both missing. And China, Xi Jinping sending his deputy.
And so it gives you a clear indication that this is perhaps the year of the political lightweights going to Davos. We don't have the heavyweight, but it's not because of Davos necessarily. It's just because, frankly, the world is in a bit of a bigger mess than it's been in a while.
Yeah, so as I suggested, I think, a very clear message comes out of who isn't there rather than who is there. And this is, interestingly, more about local political tensions than global tensions. The big global tension, of course, is Trump and China. But these leaders of the G7 are at home attending to essentially domestic matters. And then there is the overarching anxiety about the economic headwinds that have, I think, started to blow through the course of late 2018 and are getting, if anything, slightly stronger into 2019. And then perhaps that clears some of the heavy furniture for lesser economies or smaller economies to do some sort of turf stamping. Brazil is an obvious case in point.
Brazil, South Africa is another one. I mean, here we've got the South African delegation going to Davos, and there've been years in the past where we've been wholly ignored by the delegates at Davos. Last year there was a rapturous applause for then Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa, who led the South African delegation. This year there's again less competition and more opportunity potentially to be heard, or is that just a bit too wishful?
You'll remember that's where the imagery of the green shoots pushing through the ice or the snow got shot into light. So Bruce, I think there is a prospect for South Africa to get heard more and a bigger voice a year on from Ramaphosa making his first appearance. But South Africa is making this appearance against the backdrop of the Zondo Commission. EWC has captured headlines. Even if we are able to get attention and get eyes on South Africa, I suspect that it will still be overshadowed by anxieties, especially about what's going to happen in May 2019 in our domestic elections. So all good and well to get attention and eyeballs and sort of make position statements, but it's probably going to be overshadowed by concerns about, well, we still want to see what the elections in a couple of months' time look like.
And also the credibility of the president is at stake here, because the president does seem to sing from the same hymn book, but it's a slightly different hymn sheet than his party does often. And, the party will say something on land expropriation, and Cyril Ramaphosa won't contradict it directly, but he will put a smoother spin on it depending on the audience he's talking to. If the noise levels out of South Africa right now are pretty high, so that makes the president's job that much harder.
Yeah, he has, I think his work really is cut out for him in that he has the task of fixing or righting the growth level of the South African economy, even more importantly, working on growth structures. And I would argue that he can't do this without recovering the confidence of domestic investors along with global investors. And it's not either or. He's actually got to capture the confidence of both, in part speaking to that $100 billion check that he's looking to be signed. And it's hard to do that without having a clear message, establishing confidence in that message, and singing from the same hymn book and hymn sheet.
Yeah, it's a tough, South Africa right now is a tough sell, but it's better to be there than not be there, I would argue.
I think so, and there's a chance to make clear policy statements, to position yourself and message clearly. If anything, I think Cyril Ramaphosa is exceptional in articulating a policy, and he has the attention of capital markets in this forum. There is also a prospect for strengthening bilateral agreements, arguably not with the countries that are missing, but with countries that are there. Brazil, the Chinese deputy, and of the G7, the heavy lifters aren't there, but the rest are. Japan is an obvious case in point.
But certainly is. I spoke to Annabelle Bishop about this a little earlier, about the slowdown that the IMF is seeing in the world, and the fact that China is slower than at any point in the last, since 1990. I said to her, perhaps the headline writers are overblowing, at least in the short term, the seriousness of the situation. Are you particularly worried about global growth right now?
It's certainly slowing down, Bruce, and I think there's reasons to worry about, in particular, the individual incidents, the yellow vests, Brexit, the U.S. shutdown. Each of those, in their own right, are likely to pull growth lower in those local economies, and then you start to get this sort of contagion or coordination of individual lower contributions start to feed into sort of a reverse flywheel, sort of a whirlpool that sucks the global average lower. And then there, I think, are some specific aspects that are particularly worrying. I would venture that debt levels in China, the shadow banking system, are the single biggest risk that threatens growth in 2019.
It threatens growth. What does it mean for us then? Here we go off to Davos. We spend lots of money. We go on the jolly. We hope to make friends. Everybody smiles and nods politely. We come back home again. Are we better off at the end of January this year than we were at the beginning?
Look, South Africa is a small, open economy. We are heavily influenced by global events, and a bad showing at Davos is unlikely to lead to huge fallout in South Africa, but it offers a prospect for South Africa to forge or strengthen, in particular, bilateral partnerships. And I'm thinking most obviously places like Japan, Germany, which has always been a strong partner of South Africa, and Italy is a place to find a partnership. So, I think South Africa could come back stronger from Davos, unlikely to be a major needle mover, but it's an important window into South Africa. It's an important platform for us to strengthen relationships. So hopefully, at the very least, we come back with commitments and stronger relationships, if not dollar checks.
My thanks to Dr. Adrian Saville this evening. He is the Chief Executive of Cannon Asset Managers, on the line to us from Johannesburg.